Kia ora, and welcome back to We Do B2B, the podcast by Blue Ocean where we unpick the ins, outs, ups and downs of B2B marketing here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Dale Kerner, and I'm a B2B marketer like you. From emerging trends in thinking to inspiring real-world stories from smart, good people here in New Zealand, we are here to help the New Zealand B2B marketing community to become one of the best and brightest anywhere in the world. If, like me, you're a B2B marketer looking for a place to connect, learn and be inspired, you have come to the right place. Kia ora and welcome to the show today. We have a really fun guest joining us today, and I think we have a lot to learn from what Viv has to share. So we have Viv Conway from Girls Get Off. She's on a mission to normalise female pleasure, and on a number of different levels. I think the B2B community has a lot to learn from Viv. She's probably got more experience with viral content than a pathologist during a pandemic. And we'll dig into some of that work and how that's kind of played out and see if we can tease out some lessons that we can learn here in the B2B world. So first and foremost, Viv, take us away. Who are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And I'm so impressed. You didn't even have notes. Oh my God, did that off the cuff.
I tried to practice it on the way in. I hope that wasn't too staged.
That was amazing. I love it. No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for the viewers at home who don't know you and who don't know Girls Get Off.
Girls Get Off was launched in 2021 and we're a female-focused sex toy brand. Our mission is to normalise female pleasure, so we're really strict on who we are focused on, and we use a lot of humour in our marketing. So where a lot of other brands in the market might be a little bit woo-woo or they might be very aspirational, we come in right in the middle and focus on being relatable, giving people a laugh, and in doing so take away some of those uncomfortable feelings that people might have around sex or masturbation, and then that content that they create or that we create becomes shareable and spreads the message further.
That's fantastic. So just as a little bit of an origin story, why sex toys and why normalising female pleasure? Where did that come from?
I think for a bit of context, prior to this business, I had a social media agency, and my now business partner had a personalised cookie e-com business. So we had known each other through those businesses. We knew we wanted to work together, and we'd actually been looking at a few different types of businesses that we could do. We knew we were on the same wavelength about a lot of things, and obviously our strength was in the marketing and getting in front of people. So we were looking for something that was fun and that had a lot of opportunity, particularly in the social space. Jo actually came across sex toys. She could see that they were trending, but at the time we realised that your only options to go and buy one, particularly for women, was either you had to go to the weird shop down the road, which had a back entrance, and the one down the road from us, you walked straight into a sex swing, I
can picture it. It's actually just across the other side of the car park here. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just quite full on. There's a place for that, but for someone who maybe you just wanted to dip your toes in, you're a little bit curious, that was quite intense. And the other option was you go online. And online, if you click on Toys for Her, it might come up with 800 different types. And again, it can be overwhelming. It's not like choosing a movie. You've all of a sudden got all of this choice. So we thought, okay, let's create something that's like a fun, simple, positive buying experience for women to buy sex toys, which was like any other product that we were buying as women. So think of your skincare, you have this nice experience on Instagram, makes you feel good about yourself, you purchase that, it arrives really nicely packaged, and then you use the thing and it feels like an act of self-love. That's what we wanted for sex toys, not something that was like, oh, it feels a bit weird, oh God, is this all right? Oh, I'm not sure if I should tell anyone about it, thank God it's in a brown box, and then you receive it and you're still not quite 100% sure about it. We were like, let's make this really normal. And I think to your point around why we chose to normalise female pleasure, I think it was A, because we knew how to get in front of women online, but I think B, if we look at the way that female pleasure has been portrayed right through from, say, when you learn around sex ed and health all the way through to the porn and stuff that goes on, it's just not always as championed. So I'll give you an example. When I probably was in intermediate, I think, guys and girls are split up for puberty chats. You just kind of don't learn about each other's stuff.
Yeah.
Girls might be learning about periods, and everyone's learning about consent. Guys are learning about wet dreams, all important parts of the process. But I think from there, A, you're not learning about each other's stuff.
Each other's gear.
For lack of a better word. And then B, you've also got you've also probably got like wanking jokes and stuff around males, so there's an assumption that that's happening. Whereas I think for anyone in this space, there's important conversations around consent and anatomy and disease and all those sorts of things, but pleasure's not really ever touched on. And in doing so, you've also got so you might have a little bit of shame or like unsureness in that space. But then if you look at like the content, say in porn, where women are often say the participant and the clip's sort of over when the guy comes and that sort of, it's all focused around that. So whether that's intentional or not, I think subconsciously that tells us that it's not as normal, or I think the moment I realised that this was the case was when we were first launching the business, and I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, and we were just talking about the fact that we were going to start this business, and she was sort of like, "What do you mean you masturbate?" And I said, "What do you mean you don't masturbate?" And I was like, "You're like 25. How did you make it through university? Aren't you stressed?" And she's like, I've just never thought to do that." I'm just like, oh my gosh. And you realise quite quickly that I'm not saying guys have the best relationship with sexuality, and everyone has more learning to do, but there's also, because there's an assumption that it's happening and that it's okay, for women on the other hand, if you think about when that's been taught, unless there's been healthy conversations in friend groups or at home or at school, which for me there wasn't, there's actually this possibility that it's not happening, or people don't feel like it's okay or normal. So that's why we were like, actually, this is a huge problem, and this is how we can solve it. And we get testimonials from people who say, "Oh my gosh, I've never orgasmed before, and this has happened for me," or "I grew up in a really strict religious household, and this, I've always held so much shame around this topic or taboo, and now I've bought them for all my friends," or "It's changed my sex life with my husband." Like, it really goes to show how, because it's such an unknown, and it's not like getting your nails done, you go, "Oh, I love your nails, where'd you get that done?" Because it's not talked about, you just don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
So one of the things that you've done there, and I think this is absolutely fantastic, is to put that conversation out there, right? And you've built an incredible community, and the conversation that goes back and forth on Instagram and everything else like that, it's fantastic. So how did that role of community come to the fore?
Yeah, we do focus and talk about how we're a community first brand. I think where you've got a product which is, there are plenty of similar products in the market, and for us it was important that when people bought from us, they were buying more than a sex toy, because this is such like a big problem in terms of people's perception of this. We thought, okay, if we can bring people in, like I mentioned, use this humour, make them, just relax. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious. Like, just have a bit of fun with it, feel good, and then feel like they're not the first either. So if they're following following our page, a part of the community, a part of the Facebook group, they feel like there's other people on this journey with them. And the way that we put content out, we're very careful that we're never going to be, we're never going to kink shame. We're not going to come across as like anti-male. That we're all about helping women take like personal responsibility for their pleasure, learning more about themselves so that they can communicate that with other people, and having that be just like a very normal and comfortable conversation. It's so cool. I mean, I've been following your journey for a little while. I mean, you're from Mount Maunganui, which is obviously our backyard as well. So it's been actually fascinating watching the journey for you guys, and just to see how it's gone from this idea to now actually becoming almost a movement. And I think one of the things that I've picked up on, and certainly one of the things that we saw here in our own backyard, is like some of the billboards that you guys put up, which are just unmistakable, unavoidable, like great big proclamation that, hey, here's a thing you should look at. What was the thought process behind them? How did you get to doing 12-meter long billboards that talk about making you moan? I think with this business, what's important to understand is that we're so restricted by the advertising channels that we can use. So, for example, Meta won't let us advertise. Like, we're just working around some little loopholes there at the moment, but that's we haven't done that before. We can do Google search. Google shopping's a real struggle. We can do, even when we do billboards, which I'll get into, like a lot of places will say, oh, the landowner's too conservative. That's happened multiple times. It always comes up. Like, there's just constantly obstacles. So I think when maybe 90% of e-commerce businesses are probably figuring out how they can scale their Facebook ads and like use different content for that. We've literally just had to go out of the box. So we end up doing these billboards because we're like, oh, what can we do this week for attention, you know, and how can we get in the press? So we've done a number of billboards. We have always done them with the intention of getting press out of them. We've never done them with the intention of, okay, how can we make sales from this?
Yeah.
I think that's probably, or potentially that's similar for a lot of people. It's just a very top of funnel awareness piece. And I think the most notable ones were the ones that we did around Christmas time. It was probably 2021 or 2022, and Auckland had just come out of the long lockdown that they had. Was it 3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
We knew that they'd be itching to get out of town, and for those that are from New Zealand, I guess they know that a lot of Aucklanders have beach houses in Mount Maunganui. So we were like, how can we capitalise on the fact that they're going to be breaking out of lockdown, and that's going to be in the news a lot? And we thought, okay, let's put a billboard up that says Aucklanders are coming, so can you. Yeah. And initially when we went to put this billboard up, because like most things that we do, it's very last minute, we're like, we need this up on Monday, and it's a Friday, you know. And we were asking around, and again, someone said, oh, you can't have it at that site. The landowner's too conservative, but I just found a different site for you. And that guy actually used to sell sex toys, so he says, do whatever you want.
Go for gold.
We were like, perfect, what a breakthrough. So we had it on the state highway from where everyone would have been driving in to the Mount, and that day the traffic was so backed up at 2 p.m. I've never seen it like that before, and we actually saw a spike in sales from the billboard, which was just wild. In doing so, we did get an Advertising Standards Authority complaint, 1 or 2, but that billboard also was only up for a week, so the next week when we said Christmas is coming, so can you, that was nice. And because we got the complaint, we got press from that, and because our community is so invested, we made a bit of a joke out of that.
That was the Karen piece?
Yeah, and then Jo messaged me one night saying, like, I've got an idea, and she just had a billboard that we put up on social saying, Karen will give you something to moan about, after we'd sort of wound our audience up about, like, someone's complaining, you know, which made it even funnier, and then that was just the icing on the cake.
That's awesome.
It was well-rounded.
But what I love about that, and I think from the B2B perspective, it's definitely something that we can learn as well, there's this whole concept of aim for fame, which so few people actually kind of hang their hats on. But what I love about your approach there is you know, like, you know full well, like, the one billboard here in Tauranga for a week is not going to be that placement ain't going to change the game, but the mileage that you get off of it, for want of a better phrase. So how far and wide did that stuff go?
I mean, that one, that ended up in Stuff, or I think it was the Waikato Times or something, which got pushed out. Or was that the Herald? Oh no, it was Stuff. It's Stuff, so it got pushed out across NZ, which was good. But we obviously leveraged that a lot. And the fact that we could then use that on social media, like, the audience just loves it. They just think this is such good banter, this is so funny, and it's just that brand piece. And hot tip, if you book billboards the week before, you often get distressed rates, so it works in our favour every time. Be disorganised, that's my top tip with billboards. Awesome. Get the good rates.
Last minute backfills, that's so good. So obviously, you know, you kind of talk about, like, the amplifying that out through social media. You guys have done some pretty out there stuff, like the costume. I'm going to let you. I'm going to go bright red if I talk about it. So I'm going to let you do that bit.
Again, I don't know how the costumes came up. I think it was honestly Jo one day again said, why don't we just get vulva costumes made? And that'd just be so funny. I'll get one made of, like, the toy. And one of her friend's daughters was studying costume design or something, so I think we paid $140 for one of the costumes.
I wondered where you got them.
Yeah, no, we just homemade. And I got one made in Aussie and on this app called Airtasker. So same thing. You just meet someone random and some seamstress, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is the funniest thing I've ever done. So the costumes are really good. And again, like, we just always think about how can we be as, like, attention seeking as possible within obviously the, like, brand guidelines and not doing anything to tear anyone else down, but always thinking about how can we just be really thumb stopping and attention grabbing, and that has seemed to work. So the costumes are something that we do use quite often. We did get to a stage where we were like, we've been overusing these, so we've pulled back a lot, because we find that it is important to mix things up all the time. Like we're quite big on keeping it fresh, whether that is within our own content of how can we do things differently, or it's if we do stuff and people catch on, then we change and do something different as well.
Yeah. But I think what's awesome in all of that is and even what you're saying at the beginning of the conversation is just the understanding that you have of the audience, the understanding that you have of the customer, and how important. How do you kind of weave that in through the rest of the team and the business? Like how do you get people on page, or is it not difficult because you're kind of you guys kind of are the audience? Like how does that work?
Yeah, I think what surprises a lot of people around who our actual target customer is that I think a lot of people think it's for single people and a little bit younger. And while we do have quite a large following of that demographic, if I talk to people in real life and I talk to someone who's 25, she'll say to me, "Oh my gosh, I love the brand. The confessions are so funny. I still need to buy a toy." If I talk to someone who's like 38, couple of young kids in a relationship, she'll say, "Oh my gosh, I love the toy. Yeah. This is the best thing ever. I bought them for all my friends." So the person in a relationship wanting to like spice things up a little bit, probably with a little bit more disposable income, is definitely more our like top paying customer.
Okay.
And we just also use, say, like influencers that reflect that as well. So for us, we always found that if we used an influencer who was a little bit too polished, or they were too, say, beauty, or they were compared to someone who was like a regular mum or less polished, that's the only way I can explain it. I'm sure people can understand the difference between someone who's very like thirst trappy versus someone who's like keeping it real and like not wearing makeup on stories and talking about, I don't know, whatever the latest thing is happening in their life. Like it's a very different influencer, and where the polished version has probably been who people would see as a traditional influencer, our customer and our community responds better to the people who are keeping it real, and that reflects our brand too. So, yeah. Where
are you at in the journey now? Because you obviously started with selling online. How has that whole thing kind of played out? I know you're based in Sydney now, having started out in little old Mount Maunganui.
Yeah, I moved to Sydney about a year and a half ago, which has just been great, mostly for like life reasons, because it's probably time to wrap things up in Mount Maunganui, but also because I knew it would be awesome for the business, and it has been. Like even just being there and having the accessibility to different trade shows and figuring out what other people are doing to grow, and also just expanding your mind a little bit in terms of what the possibilities are has been really good. We started out selling online only for probably the first 2 years. It's probably only been in the last 6 or so months that we've decided to go into more wholesale. And that's been a really interesting journey, I guess, seeing as this is a B2B podcast, that really does feed in well with that. And it has been a change from just going direct to customer all the time to then having to flip and actually put more energy into how we're going to get in front of these potential retailers, which has been a journey.
So that whole kind of transition from selling direct, where you control the experience, when we started out the conversation, you're kind of talking about how like the traditional avenues to buying sex toys are a bit gross. Yeah. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, without shaming anyone there, but what I mean is, overwhelming, like you said.
That's why it's working.
Yeah. But given that your brand is, so opposite to that kind of traditional, I suppose, retail experience in that space, how do you control the brand experience going through retail and through distribution?
Yeah, I mean, in full transparency, we're still only just starting. Like we probably have 30 or 40 stockists, but they're all quite small, and at the moment it's just very early stages. We have like one larger retailer we're experimenting with at the moment, and that's like in the sort of gifting space. So in terms of controlling the branding and so on, it's not like we've gone through distributors just yet, but we have just made sure that's why we designed the packaging the way that we've designed it, and that's why we've just redesigned the packaging as well, so it's more shelf ready and nice, and I should have bought some in. So I think in terms of controlling the brand, it's been about what we can do on shelf, and also we've started to actually offer like half an hour Zoom sessions with the people who will be selling the product in stores, so they get a bit of an understanding. Because when we're at a trade show talking to people, and we might be talking to the business owner or the buyer, that's all well and good, but then when it gets on the shelf, we need people to also feel comfortable about like answering people's questions, or having something there that says, you know, ask us about this if they're a little bit unsure.
Yeah. You just made me smile when you said I should have brought some in. Cause how many vibrators were in your carry-on when you flew over from Australia, or did they go in the hold?
I actually didn't bring any over, which is pretty funny. I actually have no vibrators at my house at the moment because they're all back in Melbourne at our 3PL. But I know I've done many a trip with lots of vibrators in my carry-on and my check, so I can confirm that you're allowed to take them in either, for those that are a little bit worried about getting caught at security.
And you don't have issues with batteries?
No, and don't let them take them off you, because they're lithium, but they're inside a toy. It's different to a power bank.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
okay, well there you go.
So even though it's lithium, it's fine.
Oh, good to understand.
Yeah.
So started in New Zealand, now in Australia. Where does the journey end? What does success look like?
Yeah, success. We by end of 2027, we want to be in 20,000 shop doors. So we are still focusing heavily on D2C. That's our sort of bread and butter. But at the same time, we're figuring out how can we actually get this onto shelf. Because if we look at the trends, say in the UK, you've got, say, Boots Pharmacy. They've already got like butt plugs on the shelf. So they're a lot ahead of us. At the moment, we're still getting pushback from retailers. I have been having a lot of conversations, and there's still a lot of like hesitation. Yeah. But like I mentioned with the billboards, that's just nothing new. That's nothing new. Like when I had a conversation with a broker the other day, and they said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Like we love the brand, but you know the buyers just aren't quite ready yet." I'm like, "Don't be too sorry. That's standard practice." But we are positioned and ready to get on those shelves when it sort of does come through. And it's a lot of retailers have got them online at the moment, which is great. It's just a matter of time before we see them in store, I think.
Okay. But I guess because you're also part of, I suppose, normalising, that also works in your favour in the long run as well. Like that's a very long-term strategy. Yeah, totally. I mean, it'd be great if we could get on the shelf now, but it'd probably mean we'd have more competition as well. So that's true.
Yeah, it's working well.
It's fine. It's interesting that you say that they're on the shelf of Boots. I think of Boots as being really conservative. You know, like coming from the UK, that's you used to go there with your mum on a Wednesday afternoon after school to get your photos developed. Yeah. You know, like it's like. To now think that you'd be able to walk past that and see booty plugs, as you guys call them. Yeah. Cool. I mean, that's progress, right?
Such good progress. And yeah, we'll just see. I mean, it's headed in that direction, and the generation coming through as well. Like you can see the differences in perception at trade shows or expos between the age demographics of the, say, Gen Zers will say like, "Oh, I've seen this on Instagram," or they'll sort of be across it. They might not purchase because they don't have the disposable income. Yeah. You might have people in their 60s who are like really freaked out about it, or who are then like, "Oh, I'm curious about this," and are like really receptive to it. So yeah, it's just about finding where we fit in.
That's cool. That's really cool. And it'll be... What I actually love about that is actually just like the long-termism of what it is that you're trying to do. Like you're not like, for want of a better phrase, like dropping your trousers on price and trying to just squeeze the sales out now. It's like, okay, cool. When you talk about the Gen Zs, it's like that's a journey. Yeah. And I think any marketer can learn from that, right? You know, like the customer may not be there and ready to spend money today, but you nurture that person over time, you nurture that audience, and that's a pathway to long-term growth, right?
Totally. I think in the space we're in, because it's so hard to advertise, there's a few like really big players, the ones with, literally 6,000 or 7,000 SKUs, and they're the biggest players because they've been around for like 20 years. So they are also the ones who do drop the price on everything. So the only sort of avenue we have is how can we be better on brand? How can we beat them on community? How can we make people feel a part of something? And we've just got to like stick to our guns, even when it's so tempting to just go, "Oh, we need some cash flow."
Sales promo.
But like sales promos, they're not a long-term, A, they don't take any brains, anyone can have a sale, and B, it's just not sustainable either. So we just are always like very wary of when we do discount.
No, that's awesome. I mean, like they're the traditional sugar rush, right? You know, like it's just like, "Oh, great, revenue's coming in. Did we make any margin?" Well, no, we didn't. But
exactly.
Yeah, like you said, it's cash turnover for those things. But I think awesome for holding the line on that as well. You know, again, like that's one of those things in the world of marketing that everyone should kind of get behind. Like, and like you said, anyone can discount.
Anyone can discount. Yeah.
So if you were to describe the Girls Get Off brand in like less than 10 words, how would you describe it?
Fun, positive, community, and I think that's it.
Do you know, that's awesome. That's so good. You know,
and real. Fun,
real.
Positive, community, and real. Yeah.
I love how tight that is. Like, you know, it's just these core pillars. There's a few things here that we're just doing a really good job of focusing on. It's a fantastic journey to have watched. What have been the highlights? Like, what have been the moments when you're like, yep, this is going to be a thing?
I think, I mean, like starting any business, you're just so unsure as to whether it's going to work until you actually put it out there and see if people pay for it, right? You can do as much research as you like, but you're just not sure. And I think when we had hyped it up initially, and when we did launch the website, and I think we got 2 or 3 sales while we were just testing the website, I think for me, I was like, that doesn't happen. That never happens. You know, I think we'd planned to launch on the Monday. We put the website live on the Friday just to iron things out. We'd already been teasing what was sort of going to come, so we had the website linked on the Instagram, and to have made like 2 or 3 sales over that weekend before we'd even announced that it was live, that said to me that there's people obviously having a little look around, and there's enough of those people that we've made 2 or 3 sales, and I think that was definitely a highlight to go, okay, well, we've actually got something here. Other highlights have been, oh gosh, I need to start writing them down because there's so many funny things that happen. It's been really cool getting into some of our larger, like the larger retailer that we're in at the moment is called Giftbox, which has got just over 200 stores in Australia. So we're doing a little trial in like 10 or 15 with a couple of other cool brands. So that was a pretty cool move.
Yeah.
And I think, gosh, what are some of the other things? I think when a video goes viral, or we do viral content on the back of billboards, or if it's making people dance for free vibrators down at the promenade on Bondi, like the dopamine rush obviously feels pretty good when you're like, yes, the people love it. Especially if there's a video you're like, oh, I'm not really sure how this is going to go. Yeah. But when you can see that people are like connecting and they love it, then that's always a highlight.
I mean, some of the stuff that you guys have shared, there was one particular video, it was, I think it was Joe and someone else from your team working with Google Translate to basically put words in one language and put out something that sounds a bit filthy in another one. It was so funny. I bet you shared that around the office, you know, hey guys, look at this. So you should know that it goes further than just your audience.
And that's why it's so important that we make it funny, because you're never going to share around the office, anatomy of a vulva, or like 5 facts you should know about masturbation. Like there's a place for that, and that's really important. And there are brands that do really well at that education piece. But for us, if we create something funny, it makes you laugh, you're going to share it with everyone, and then all of a sudden we're in front of people, and you don't feel weird about it, you know? You wouldn't share that around the office, but it makes it fun and normal. That's awesome. That's so cool. It must have been quite a moment when you signed off on like the first like production run. Like, was that like a response to an email? Was that a click of accept? Like, what did that look like? It was just so nerve-wracking, because initially we thought, okay, what's the minimum we can do to just get this off the ground? Yeah. And we were like, let's just get 500. And then to get 1,000 toys, to get the customizations we wanted, we had to get 1,000, and we were like, oh, well, I guess we'll just buy 1,000 vibrators then, and if it doesn't work, we'll just have 1,000 in Joe's garage and we can give them away to our mates. Like, that was a plan. So, yeah, it was pretty funny. I mean, from the B2B perspective, I know, like, typically historically it's been quite sterile, but so much of what you're talking about here just rings so true. You know, like you're talking about struggling to access a market because you can't advertise. Like we can't, you know, in B2B, like sometimes we struggle to reach the right people, and you have to get a bit creative to kind of skin that cat. Attention, like how do you make something that's either, you know, in the context of B2B, sometimes the stuff ain't that exciting. You know, like screws. But I think there's so much that you've talked about there about making it fun, making it relatable. Are there any other tips, tricks, and like lessons that you would share from your experience in D2C side of things that you think we could learn from in the B2B camp? I think one of the things that has really played in our favour, and because we focused on D2C and building that brand, when we decided we're going to do retail, like we're going to go into retail, we want to be in pharmacies, like this is, and we were in a few, maybe say we were in 10 already because people from our audience had just decided to start stocking us. We thought, we've got mates who've got sales reps and they go around and they do shop visits and cold calls and stuff like that. So we started with all right, let's start with cold calls because we don't have a food product where we can just give them samples. So we thought, let's just pick up the phone and start ringing people and we'll get lists made of all these different pharmacies. And man, that was such a grind. We never got to the stage of going in and asking, going in and showing the product around, because what we found was that it's such a grind to do all those cold calls compared to if you just build the brand on Instagram and then people come to you. There's no questions about what's the minimum order quantity. There's no questions about, it's not a hard sell. If we build the brand and the buyers come to us off the back of the brand, because the buyers are often just different followers, or if we're at a trade show and they stalk us and they can see that, there's less questions around, I don't want to buy that many, or I can't do this, or just a lot of hesitation. They sort of just get it, and it's a really easy process. So I think the learning has been for us that by building the brand and focusing on the brand, people will come to you, or when they do come to us, say because of a conversation we've had, it's just so easy. It's not like having to cold call someone, follow them up, do all that little hustle and send them samples and then follow them up again and really build that. It's been definitely the long term and it's been a long play, but it's been way easier.
So in that long-term journey, when did you really start to see the wheels kind of gripping the road? Because building a brand is a long-term thing. At what point did you know that the brand was going to be the thing that actually carried you all the way through and made the difference? Or was it just from day one, you're the brand is what we have and that's what we're going to work with?
Yeah, I think because it was so different, I think because we had such a shock factor at the start when we got our initial influencers on board who started posting about it, of which there were not many, but once we got a couple, it was such a shock factor that people were talking about sex toys on Instagram, that I think now we actually are in a space where we've got to focus even heavier on brand and upkeep it, because at the start I think it was a lot easier because it was so different, it's clickable, and I think now we're actually in a phase where we're wow, we've got to outdo ourselves again and be really relevant and try and find a way of being shocking or attention seeking like we used to be, because we can't just show a vibrator and be shocking anymore. It's got to be something different, and whether that be with a content or something else, it's got to be different.
I look forward to seeing what some of that looks like, because I can't, based on what you guys have done already, that only stands to be just awesome and fun. Yeah,
I think it will come. It always comes back to content for us, but there's other sort of things that we're working on in terms of, all right, we've kind of got a lot of the low hanging fruit, and we've built a really good audience from socials, and now we're how can we take this and get people from other avenues and get in front of customers in other ways, whether that be at in-person shows like we've been doing, or just other marketing channels. We'll see.
Oh, that's cool. On the brand note, and tell me if this is a question that I can't ask you on air, so to speak, but where'd you sit in terms of pricing, relative to other people in the market? What does the brand afford you in terms of pricing power?
I think as far as sex toys go, we're actually quite mid-range.
Okay.
In terms of, it just depends who you're talking to. So some people, for example, if I compare our most popular toy, Missy, with other brands, a lot of people will have only heard of the Satisfyer Pro, or I think there's Satisfyer Pro is sort of the main one that people might have heard of, or the Womanizer.
That's a terrible name.
Exactly.
It's awful.
I know. So especially with the Satisfyer, that's a really low, it's a lower price point. For the same sort of function kind of toy, a lot of toys are actually in the over $200 mark, and ours is about $145. So a lot of the toys and more of the toys in the market are probably over $200. So if I talk to someone in person at an expo, for example, if I'm talking to someone who's bought sex toys before and who's been to a lot of sex toy stores, or they've had exposure to that, they go, oh, this is really reasonably priced. If I speak to someone who's perhaps just bought one at a recommendation from a friend or a little bit younger, they'll say like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. Yeah. So we're actually in the middle as far as sex toys go, but in terms of being able to charge more than the like really lower end of the market, brand definitely affords us more. Plus our product is better, but it helps, you know what I mean? Yeah, 100%.
And it will be interesting to see as well, like I don't know how prominent brands are in the space that you're in. So the fact that, okay, you may be like, you know, kind of mid-price range, but do you sell, like, would you be selling more units than some of those kind of more, like, I suppose, known brands over time, do you think?
I think the Satisfier they've done, like, I believe they've sold like 15 million units or something. So I don't think we have.
All right.
There's something wild like that. So not quite.
Not quite.
But people don't have a connection to those brands like they have for us. They'll have a connection to the product, or they'll love the product itself, but they don't have they're not loyal to those brands because they're huge and they have names like the Womanizer.
The Womanizer, which is as soon as you said it,
a nod to the patriarchy, you know, like, so it's just not. Yeah, they're not connected to the brand. They're only connected to the product. So there's a huge opportunity for us in there.
And how does that then play out in things like cross-sell? Like, do you have, like, of your customer base, how many of them have kind of multiple different variations? They buy in the juicy, they've got the booty plugs. Like, what's that kind of like ownership piece look like?
Yeah, we do have I could pull some stats for you, but I don't know them, which I should. But yeah, we do have a lot of people who come back for more. When we launched our second toy, we thought we'd, again, do something a little bit different and fun, and we actually sent everyone who'd purchased from us before like a physical letter, giving them, again, discreet, so it looked like a bank statement. It came in like a plain white envelope with no like sender address. And we gave them like special access to our new product, but we wouldn't show them what the product was. So they could scan the QR code and go onto the landing page, but it was just like this mystery product. It had testimonials from people that had been in the testing phase. And so they were just sort of putting their trust into us in terms of like, you know, all right, I'll trust you guys. And I think we got close to 1,000 pre-sales from that, which was just epic. So in terms of like people trusting the brand, huge, yeah.
So, and the price point of that is what?
The price point of that was $169, but I think we gave them like a 15% secret discount. Yeah.
But that's awesome. I mean, to get people to spend $170 on a thing,
something that they don't know what they're buying.
They don't know what it is. A mystery pink object. Like
we by that stage, for a number of different reasons, we'd actually only had one toy for about 18 months. So people were like in our DM saying, "When are you going to bring out something next? Like, what's the next product?" And we were like, "We know this was supposed to be 6 months ago." So yeah, we'd already had some hype and people were expecting it from us, but it was pretty cool to see people take us up on that.
Oh, it's awesome. I love that. It's a great campaign as well. A great way to launch a product. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, the physical mail was definitely, like, in terms of actual return, like, it was a little bit of admin to actually get that set up, and like a lot of things that we do, and I'm sure other business owners will relate with, just like genuinely not knowing how you're going to do something, just having the idea and figuring it out. It was a little bit of admin once we got it going, but once it did happen, it performed just as well as, say, an influencer, like in terms of the return on what we spent. Yeah, that's
cool. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've done a lot of actual physical stuff ourselves this year. We sent cakes, not access to vibrators, but and there was a whole campaign that went with that. It's worked really, really well for us. But we've actually seen a number of people kind of like going down that avenue. Like I said, digital channels are totally like crammed full.
Yeah.
In the B2B space as well. Like, there's always that, like, am I getting in front of the right person piece? So we're almost seeing a bit of a renaissance around physical.
Yeah, and like no one gets mail anymore either.
100%.
Like, I think my parents were saying the mail only gets delivered like 3 days a week or something where they live. Like, it's not every day anymore.
No, no, I think it might even only be Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty uncluttered channel.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we did have a couple of people with that situation where their mail had been opened by like a PA or something, and so there was like a few unhappy people.
But did the PAs bought it? Did they? Or?
Yeah. As a percentage, it was like less than 1%. It was like tiny.
So do you ever worry about that percentage that's going to get offended? Because I think it's a really, really interesting kind of final point here. Is like, what do you do? What do you do with the people that you know you're going to marginalise?
Yeah, I mean, that in that situation, like, we obviously don't want. Because we push the boundaries so often, we do run the risk sometimes of falling. You know, we're always going to be at risk of taking it too far.
Yeah.
But it always obviously comes from like a very playful and kind space.
Yeah.
In that situation, I feel like sometimes the negatives, like as humans, they just stand up more than the positives. So we felt really bad and we're like, oh God, I'm so sorry, you know, because it's not a comfortable conversation for everyone. But yeah, in that situation, we obviously dealt with everyone individually who was a little bit upset. But I think there was like 5 or something. But it's still not. You don't want to have that on people. But we knew going into that was a possibility. That's why we tried to make it really discreet. But yeah, not always the case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always going to be the people who love it.
Exactly.
And then there'll always be, like you said, like the loud ones on the fringes who
are, and people did love, you know, we had people posting it on their like Instagram stories being like, I can't wait for what's next. So, you know, when you send it to over 10,000 people, you're going to get some
haters. Yeah. That was just such an enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much. And I hope that our B2B audience here can kind of pick up some of the trends of, you know, some of the parallels, accessing markets that you struggle to, you know, like for your case with the fact that your advertising channels are shut down. I love the conversation around like aiming for fame and actually using the billboard as a way of, you know, taking it out and further than the actual reach of the actual physical object. And then kind of also like navigating that use of brand as a beacon to pull people to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, if every marketer could nail that, I mean, to be fair, we'd probably all go into sales promotions at that point. But if we could all do that, I think the marketing community at large would be in pretty good shape. So I think you've had some fantastic insights to share with us. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
I look forward to sharing it. But so one thing we should just quickly check in before we wrap the conversation. From your experience on social media channels, which words can't we use when we post this?
Nothing too explicit, and don't describe any acts. Don't describe any acts. That's the one that's got us in trouble before. Yeah.
Okay, we'll use a few exclamation marks, a few dollar signs, and hope we skirt around that.
Those, a little bit censored. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dale.
That's that. Thanks for listening to We Do B2B by Blue Ocean. Now, brace for CTAs. If you want to join and grow the community, make sure to subscribe wherever your eyes and ears absorb information. Don't forget to switch on notifications so you know when the latest episodes drop. And for more B2B goodness, be sure to follow Blue Ocean, the B2B agency, on LinkedIn. Now look, you know how this next piece works. The more reviews we get, the faster this thing grows. So please do for us what you'd hope your customers would do for you. Leave a review and share your thoughts. Let's stay connected and keep the B2B marketing conversation going.